The sun was just beginning to rise over the school courtyard, casting long shadows across the training ground. KY stood nervously at the edge of the field, clutching his notebook and trying to steady his breathing. Today was the final round of the school's big competition, something he had been preparing for over a month. His friends chatted excitedly nearby, but Kai's hands were trembling. He had practiced so hard, yet doubt filled his mind. When his turn finally came, KY stepped forward. His voice cracked as he began to speak, and halfway through his presentation, his mind went completely blank. Silence filled the room. He tried to recover, but the words just wouldn't come. A few students in the back began to whisper and giggle. His teacher gave him a sympathetic look, but KY felt his face burn with embarrassment. When he finally sat down, his heart sank. Later that day, the results were announced. KY didn't even make it to the top 5. His friends patted his shoulder awkwardly, not sure what to say. One of them muttered, "Maybe this just isn't your thing." That line hit him harder than any failure. As the others celebrated their success, KY quietly packed his things and walked home alone, his mind replaying every mistake he'd made. At home, he threw his bag onto the bed and stared at the ceiling. "Why can't I ever get things right?" he thought bitterly. He could hear the laughter of his classmates echoing in his memory. The dream he once held, to be confident, to stand out, to make his family proud, suddenly felt impossible. The evening sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft orange glow through the small window of Kai's room. The once vibrant space felt unusually silent. His textbooks lay open, untouched, their pages fluttering slightly under the slow whir of the ceiling fan. On the desk, a crumpled test paper sat like a reminder of failure, a big red mark circled at the top. KY sat on the edge of his bed, his head lowered, elbows resting on his knees. He replayed the day over and over again, the laughter of classmates, the disappointed glance from his teacher, and the sting of defeat that seemed to pierce deeper than words. "Maybe I'm just not good enough," he whispered to himself, his voice barely audible. His eyes wandered to the photo frame beside his bed, an old picture of him with his father at a small local sports event. In the picture, his father's hand rested proudly on his shoulder. The words his father once told him echoed in his mind, "Son, winners are just ordinary people who refuse to give up." Something stirred inside him. He rose slowly and walked toward the mirror. His reflection stared back, tired eyes, but still alive with a faint spark. He leaned closer, as if searching for strength within his own gaze. "Am I really going to quit now?" he murmured. The silence that followed was heavy but powerful. Taking a deep breath, KY picked up the test paper, smoothed out the wrinkles, and pinned it to the wall above his desk, not as a mark of shame, but as a reminder. "Next time," he said softly, "I'll be ready." That night, instead of lying in bed in defeat, KY opened his books again. The air felt lighter, charged with a quiet determination. It wasn't about proving others wrong anymore, it was about proving to himself that he could rise again. In that moment, KY realized something profound. Failure only wins when you stop trying. The next morning, KY woke before sunrise. The air was cool and quiet, the kind of silence that carried both peace and possibility. He tied his shoelaces, grabbed his books, and stepped outside. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't thinking about failure, he was thinking about progress. Every day became a routine of effort and persistence. At dawn, KY could be seen jogging around the field, his breath visible in the chilly air. He would whisper to himself with every step, "I can do this. I will not give up." When others were still asleep, he was pushing through his limits, practicing speeches, rewriting essays, solving problems again and again until they made sense. At school, his friends noticed the change. During breaks, while others laughed or played games, KY would be in the corner of the classroom, reviewing notes or rehearsing in front of a mirror. Some teased him at first. "Relax, KY, it's just a school contest, not the Olympics." But he only smiled and kept working. Inside, he knew this was bigger than a competition, it was about becoming stronger than his doubts. The days turned into weeks. His body grew tired, his mind often exhausted, but each night he reminded himself why he started. There were moments when he wanted to give up again, when the words didn't come out right or when he stumbled during practice, but then he'd look at the test paper pinned to his wall. It reminded him of where he had been, and where he wanted to go. Slowly, KY began to improve. His voice grew more confident, his mind sharper, his movements smoother. He could feel it, the gap between who he was and who he wanted to be was closing, little by little. Underneath the sweat and struggle, something powerful was growing, belief. KY was no longer afraid of failing, he was becoming unstoppable. The day of the competition arrived again, the same stage, the same bright lights, but a very different KY. As he stood behind the curtain, waiting for his turn, he could feel his heart racing, but this time it wasn't fear. It was excitement. He had been here before, but now he carried something stronger than nerves. He carried preparation, perseverance, and pride in how far he had come. His name was called. The crowd's noise faded into silence as he walked onto the stage. For a brief moment, he looked out at the audience, teachers, students, judges, and felt the weight of the moment. He took a deep breath, remembering his father's words, "Winners are ordinary people who refuse to give up." Then, he began to speak. His voice, once shaky and unsure, now flowed with strength and clarity. Every word carried emotion, every pause felt intentional. He didn't rush, he didn't panic, he spoke from the heart, drawing from the lessons he had learned through every failure, every long night of practice. The audience listened quietly, some even nodding as his words reached them. As KY finished his final line, a moment of silence filled the room, followed by applause that grew louder and louder. His classmates, who had once doubted him, now looked at him with surprise and admiration. His teacher smiled proudly, eyes glistening with tears. KY stood there, stunned for a moment, then smiled, not out of arrogance, but relief. He had done it. When the results were announced later that day, Kai's name was called, first place. He couldn't believe it at first. His friends cheered, clapping him on the back, shouting his name. But deep down, KY knew the real victory wasn't the trophy or the title. It was the fact that he didn't give up, that he faced failure, learned from it, and turned it into strength. For the first time, he truly understood. Success is born from persistence. The sun had already set by the time the celebration ended. KY sat alone on the empty stage, holding the small golden trophy in his hands. The lights had dimmed, but a single beam still shone on him, reflecting softly off the polished surface. Around him, the echoes of applause lingered faintly in the air, a sound he had once only dreamed of hearing. He ran his fingers over the engraved words on the trophy, "Champion." A gentle smile spread across his face. It wasn't the prize itself that mattered, but what it represented. Every early morning, every late night, every moment he wanted to give up but didn't. His teacher approached quietly and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You've come a long way, KY, she said warmly. "Do you know what made the difference this time?" KY thought for a moment. "I stopped being afraid to fail," he replied. "I realized that every failure was just another step forward, as long as I kept trying." Later that week, during the school assembly, KY was invited to share his journey. As he stepped up to the microphone, the entire hall fell silent. He could see familiar faces, his friends, teachers, even those who had once laughed at him. He began softly but confidently. "A few months ago, I stood here and failed. I was embarrassed and almost gave up. But I learned something important. Success doesn't come to those who never fall, it comes to those who never stop getting back up." The audience listened, captivated. Some students nodded, others smiled, inspired by the sincerity in his voice. KY continued, "If you have a dream, protect it. Don't let fear or failure take it away from you. Because the moment you stop trying, that's when you truly lose." When he finished, the hall erupted in applause, not for the trophy, but for the courage and resilience he had shown. As KY stepped down from the stage, he knew his journey wasn't over. But now, no matter what came next, He carried one unshakable truth within him, the power of never giving up.